And we're live.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to my Comms First session. I'm calling it Workflows with Teams in My Real Life. My name's Laurie Pottmeyer, and I am the community lead at Microsoft Teams in Teams Engineering. I'm a senior PM. I've been there for about 15 years, almost. And I represent the Quality and Customer Obsession team. Our team ensures that we bring customer, partner, community feedback directly to our engineering team. And our goal is to deliver a quality product that's built for you, taking your feedback into consideration. So I work with all of our different communities. I work, I come to community events such as Comms First, and I'm involved with that. I also work with our MVP community and our RD, our regional directors, and bring their feedback and interact with our product groups so that we can be sure to keep them apprised of what's going on as well. In addition to that, I work on the Microsoft Tech community. So I lead the Microsoft Teams space in the tech community. And so love seeing many of you there as well. So community lead, that's kind of what I do. I connect people with our engineers. So today, I'm looking forward to sharing some of the practical ways I work in Teams, to share just some tips and tricks and things that work for me, and I hope it's useful for you. So anyway, welcome. So glad you're here. Comms First is such a great event, and we couldn't do this event without the many sponsors that are involved. And I hope some of you have checked out or gone to the expo hall and checked them out there in Teams and said hello and asked your questions. I've been popping in there, and I know a lot of them are coming into many of your sessions. So be sure to visit them, ask any questions that you have. They're here to interact and talk with you as well. So the way that I wanted to kind of kick things off today, and I have about 4 or 5 sections that I wanted to go through, and I'll be doing primarily demo. But I wanted to kind of start things off by saying we're all different, and we all work for different organizations in different fields in different countries with different regulations. And on top of that, we have different styles, right? We have different communication styles. We have different focus styles. We even work differently. Within our own team, within our own organization, we're all so very different. So we also have different schedules, and right now especially, people need to allow us some grace with how we work and when we work. And really, we're all people, we're all humans, and we need tools that allow us to do our best work. And Teams is that tool to do that, but ultimately it's the people that are using the tool that kind of make up how it's used. So certainly Teams as a technology, we need to provide features and functionality that work for what you're trying to do. But ultimately, you as that human, as that worker, determines how it's used. And this is especially important as in today's climate. So today I'm going to do something, like I said, very different. I've never done this before, so I hope this resonates with you all, and I'd love to get your feedback. So at the end of the session today, there is a survey, and please fill that out and give me some feedback and let me know if this works for you. But I'm going to be sharing my Teams client with you, and I'm going to give you a little tour of the way I work. So I'm going to talk about how I start my day, how I organize my teams, how I find what I need in Microsoft Teams, and then how creating community in Teams helps our work. This is going to be a very practical session, and you might know everything that I tell you, but hopefully you will walk away with at least a new perspective or a tip or a trick that might work for you. Or maybe I'm just going to validate how you already use Teams. So just remember, because we are all different, we won't use Teams the same way, but hopefully, you take a little something away from today. And I'd love to hear your tips and tricks in the way that you do things as well. So visit the tech community, the Microsoft Tech community, and share with us how you use Teams in new and different ways. It's really valuable for all of us to be able to share that. Love this community. So first I'm going to talk about starting my day and kind of what that looks like. And there's really 4 things that I'm going to cover. I'm going to show you how I use the activity feed and chat, and then checking pin channels and setting a status message. So let me go into my teams and we will begin. So here's my Teams client. I'm sharing on the, obviously this is the web client. So you're looking at a little bit of a different view. But on the left-hand rail here, we see our activity feed. And the activity feed can be a little bit overwhelming. When we first come in here in the morning, for me, I actually do this on mobile. But it's the same functionality that I can see everything that's happening in the activity feed. So what you see in here is a variety of different things, and you can click on this little toggle here, and you can filter on, the little filter button here. So what I do is I start in the morning and I go and I find my @ mentions. And my @ mentions will bring me everybody that has @ mentioned me in a team conversation or in a chat conversation. And then I also go to my chats, which are over here in a whole different section. But really, it's important for me to first go to my @ mentions. And the reason for that is because anybody that @ mentions me, they need something from me or they're responding to me based on a question that I've asked them. So I look at that as an email that is important to me, right? When I get an email and it's directed to me, then they're telling me something specifically, or they're asking for a question. So they want something back from me. And so I look at the @ mentions as simply that. It's somebody that is looking for something from me, and that's the most important thing that I want to check in the morning. So look at the @ mentions first, and then I may or may not go to unread, but you can see if I go to @ mentions, it will bring me to my @ mentions, and it takes me directly to where I asked that question. And then I go to my chats. Chat is probably the very next thing that I go to, because these are the people that have questions for me one-on-one or here in a group chat. So these are questions that people have asked me directly, and of course I'm going to go and talk to them and respond to those things that they had a question about. The other thing that I wanted to point out is up here on the top, if you go to my pinned, you'll see that Caruana, my manager, is a pinned conversation of mine. And that's so that I can easily find her, because I may have a question for her or she may have something for me. And I just always want it to be right up there at the top. And those pinned conversations for me, those change on a pretty frequent basis. Every week, there may be a couple more people in there, depending on what project or what I have going on right now. So I wanted to share that with you. Those are the very top 2 things that I do. The other thing that I do, if I go to my teams again, the next thing I check are my pinned teams. And you may have noticed, much like my chats, I have pinned teams. And so you can pin these teams and you can unpin them also at any time by just clicking unpin. And what that does is it brings me to the things that are most important to me. So these are the conversations that I look at very, very closely each day. I look at them because they're most directly related to the things that I'm doing within the different channels or within the different teams that I have. So you'll notice that, this is in the O365 Service and Support Readiness team, which is a team that I belong to. And I don't care about 80% of what's happening in that team, but I definitely care about what's happening in the blog and what's happening in the community management channels, because those are specifically related to me. So therefore, I don't have to scroll down my hundreds of teams and look through everything that's going on in every team. I just can pin the channels that are the most important to me. And of course, if there's something that is bolded, it means that there's something new in there. So once it's unbolded, it no longer has something new. It means that I've already clicked on it. I've gone through there. The other thing that you can do is go to channel notifications. And if something is really important to you, you can turn on channel notifications. So I'll talk about notifications in a minute. But there's a lot of things that you can do within the channel itself as well. And then the fourth thing that I wanted to share with you on how I start my day is by setting a status message. And the status message is something that will come up when somebody goes to message me. So if they start typing a new message, and here, I'll try to show you an example of this. Because I know that our friend Koshal usually, oh, come on, don't let me down. Darn, he doesn't have it set today. All right, so usually he will have a message here, and it will have a message that, let me go back and show you mine. So you can see right here, if I click on change status, that you can see that I will be largely offline Monday through Wednesday, right? So I have told them that I'm not going to be on the Microsoft tenant much this week. I'm going to be in the Comms1st tenant. So you can probably reach me throughout the day, most of the day. Of course, I also have my mobile client, and I also can have this on the web. So I am here, but I'm really not paying attention to it. So this is a status message. It will show up, and that was a bad example of Koshal. He usually has one on there. When I start typing a message, it will show up here in their conversation space so that when they start typing a message to me, they can see I've set that expectation that, hey, I'm not really going to be available and around. And then at any time, I can edit it. But you'll also notice that it says it's displayed until Wednesday at 2 o'clock, because Wednesday at 2 o'clock is when my last session is at Comms1st. So I know that I'll have a little bit more time that afternoon to log in and start doing my Microsoft work as well. So those are the 4 things that I wanted to share with you how I start my day. And it's really important to me that I am sharing and setting my expectations with the people that I work with. Okay, so let's go ahead and I will talk about the next thing. And let's probably not go to the end of the slide. Let me go back here. Let's go to I've got too many things open here. Okay, so let's talk about organizing teams. So when I'm organizing teams, there's really kind of 4 things that I wanted to highlight. One is the importance of starting small. One is our channel descriptions and making sure that those are visible and obvious. And then when you should and should not use private channels, and then how you handle your team's governance as it relates to channels and teams. So let me go back here, and the first thing that I wanted to address is starting small. And so when you go to your teams, and I'll use the MVP team here as kind of a guinea pig, and it's not, you know, there are a lot of channels in here, okay? There's a lot of channels in the MVP team that you can see. When I first, you have to understand this team is about 3 years or more old, right? Well, probably about 3 years old, because when guest access was available, that's when I created this team. So it started much smaller, but what happens is that once you see more and more conversations taking place that don't really have a spot, they don't really have their own channel or category, then we need to start expanding. And so what happens is there's a lot of conversations that happen in general, and they're just all over the place, right? They're on different topics. And so I monitor that on a daily basis. And once they start seeing themes of things that are conversations that are taking place that are on a certain subject that maybe deserve their own category or channel, then I'll create a new channel. And examples of that are EDU, first line workers, gov, and healthcare. We started seeing a lot of conversations that were taking place specific to those categories, those industries. And so I created some channels to help us there. Channel descriptions. So I'll go into one of our channels here. I've got this Meet the MVPs channel. And this is where we introduce MVPs so that we can build a sense of community, which leads me into my last category, which is creating community. So we'll talk about that later. However, if I go to the channel here, I can manage the channel and I can edit this channel. And so those are kind of two things here that I wanted to talk about. One is editing the channel. You know, you can change the channel name at any time. I would kind of strongly advise you not to do that because the name of your channel is tied to where your files are stored in SharePoint. And that can be a little bit confusing if there's two names for the same place. But what I would want to show you is that you can change the description at any time. So I would urge you to go in and any channels that are not so obvious, or even if they are obvious to you, just putting a description in there, because when people hover over that, they can see what that channel is about, what conversations should be taking place in there. So I'm showing this is an intro to new and existing MVPs who are focused on Microsoft Teams. Very simple. We're just doing intros in this one. Other ones may be projects or, you know, there are specific discussions that need to take place in there and nowhere else. And so that's where I would put that information. And then you can see that there's this little checkbox here, automatically show this channel in everybody's channel list. There are certain channels in the team that I want every MVP to see when they first log in. And so Meet the MVPs is one of them. I want them to see Meet the MVPs. I want them to see Meet the Teams team. I want them to see our Message Center posts and our new announcements, right? What are those big things? And then they can decide if they want to hide channels or display other channels based on what's of interest to them. So that is kind of my channel description plug. That can be very useful. But going back to starting small and making sure that you don't have too many channels is important, because you don't want, you know, we call it team sprawl when you have too many teams. And the other piece of that is channel sprawl. You can have way too many channels. And then what happens is that your channels start just dying. They're just stale. There's nothing happening in them. And one of the cool things actually that you can do is when you're in your channel, you can go and get some data on your channel as well. So if I go into manage channel, there's a few things that I can do here. One, I can decide, you know, do I want to moderate this? Meaning, do I want to restrict who's going to be able to post in the channel, or do I want everybody who has access to the team to be able to start new posts and be able to communicate in that? So, if, you know, that's the kind of first and foremost is setting up those channel permissions. Now, I will say that when an instance when you might want to restrict is when you want it to be only announcements. You are the owner or the moderator on that channel, and you are the only one that's going to be presenting out or speaking. It's going to be a one-to-many, right? This is an announcement. So we have a couple of those channels in the Teams team where it's, you know, our senior leadership that is making announcements. And so we can comment on those announcements and say congratulations or whatever, but it keeps some control over what's happening in that channel so that it's not just a free-for-all. There are times when that definitely makes sense. And then other times where obviously we want it to be very, very collaborative and people to be able to talk regularly with one another. So that is one thing that's important. And then analytics, and I kind of have this on a note to talk about in the next session, or next section, but there's some really cool analytics. And if you haven't been in here as a team owner, this is really exciting because it's kind of the first of the reporting capabilities that are going to be happening in the channels and in the teams. So you can look at these analytics within the channel and see, oh, okay, there's 916 people in here. We've had only 2 posts, right? Because we have this is not a conversational team, right? This is a thing that we post once a week on average, and people can go in there and check it out when they want. This is not really a working channel, so it makes sense the engagement is low. But then there are other times, if I go to some of my project teams where we're talking, or conversations that I want to really keep active, then I can go and I can look at my engagement and see. So there's some really cool capabilities there for reporting, but also when you go to your team itself, you'll see that there are some pretty cool analytics for that as well. I'm totally skipping ahead. So anyway, some really cool things for organizing teams and governance. I would say, from a governance perspective on your teams, you have the ability to not only, create members and, add them, but then you also have the ability to set all of your settings here. And so there's a lot of different things that you can do here. And I'm sure there are probably a couple of different governance sessions, and I would urge you to dig into that, because there's a lot of pros and cons into how to govern teams and channels. That could be a whole session in and of itself. But some of the things for me that's important is that we keep things in this team in particular very collaborative, so that everybody can communicate in whenever they need to. But there are a couple of things that we want to highlight, and that's why we've made some of the channels visible automatically and things like that. Okay, so let me go back, and we're going to talk about now, the next thing is finding what I need. And when I say finding what I need, I just come from a little different place, because I've always been remote while in this job. So I've worked at Microsoft for just about 15 years, and about half of that time I've worked from home. And I'm 3 hours south of Bellevue, so I'm 3 hours south of where most of my team lives. Now, we do have a few people on my team that are distributed geographically, so I'm not alone, but I feel alone in my day-to-day work, because I'm not there in the office. Which I'm sure a lot of you are experiencing right now, based on how we are all working from home, or some of us have gone back, but it's not like it used to be. So I've experienced this for quite a while, and in my job, it's difficult because I'm, in a sense, this matchmaker. So I'm the one that is supposed to be connecting our public, many of which, vast majority of which, I have never met in person, of course. And hopefully that will change, and we can be in person in these events at some time, and we can be in person at Ignite and events like that, and I can actually meet more people in person again, which is really what I love. However, right now that's not the case, but also my team is not with me. I'm not with my team. They're 3 hours north, and so for me, I'm not in the office day to day, and that presents some challenges, right? I, for one, am not able to just ask the quick question. I don't have the water cooler. I don't have the lunchroom. I don't have the hallway. I don't bump into people. I also have a very hard time putting names with faces. So because I'm not in the office, I don't know who everybody is. And it's interesting, when I go to the office, people know me more than I know them, because I'm the one that's remote. And so they may see my picture, and then I come into the office and they recognize me because they don't see me as often. Whereas I have the whole team to not recognize, and all I have is their profile picture. And so it's really important that I have an easy way to find what I need, the information that I need from the people I need, when I need it. So there's a few ways that I'm going to show you kind of what I mean by that. And the first thing is having the descriptive channels. And that's something that I showed you here a minute ago is, being able to name these channels and can keep them the same. But being able to create channel names that are not so broad that people don't know what is supposed to go in there and not go in there, but also not so narrow that they can't have conversations about anything other than one thing. So just be careful how you name your channels and really think about the work. So I think sometimes we get a little caught up in trying to, lay out the perfect team and lay out the perfect channels. And, I think it's important that we think about the work that we're trying to do. Who are the people and what's the work we're trying to do? What is the task? What's the end goal? How are we going to complete those tasks? And so when you're thinking about that with channels, what are the conversations specifically that I want to have in here? So for instance, for MVP community calls, this channel is for calls that we have every single week. And we have an MVP presenting to the rest of the MVPs. So in this channel, it's descriptive. It is something that happens every week. We call them MVP community calls, and those are the conversations that take place. They know when they come in here, they can get the invite to that session. They can get the decks and the recordings from the sessions. And then if they want to continue the conversations from those community calls that we have each week, there's a posting for each week when we've had those discussions, and they can continue to have discussions there. They can come up here to the files and they can get all of the recordings and the slides associated with those calls. So again, naming your channels, what will make sense to people, not making them so broad. And of course, be sure that you have those descriptions. The other thing is contact cards. So this is when somebody says, go talk to X, right? And you're thinking, okay, I have no idea who X is. So how do I find them? So I'm going to put in here, I'm going to make Caroline my guinea pig because she is, whoops, if I know how to spell her name. Caroline is my manager, so I can go in here, let's say I don't know who she is, I hope I do, but I can click on her and I can find her, and then I can get her contact here. Okay, so I can look and I can say, oh, Caroline is principal PM, here's her information, and then I want to say, oh, who does she report to? So then I can look here and I can find in the organization, and I'm like, oh, okay, she's on Alex's team. That makes sense. And then I can get the contact cards here. And this is a really easy way for me to figure out who the people are and be able to understand how the connections are made, who's on what team. A lot of times if I'm looking for a feature, for instance, I know who is owning that feature, but I don't know what team it belongs to. So I can go and figure out this way. So super helpful for me to find the contact cards and be able to know who people are as well. Sometimes I have to look at somebody's picture, for instance. The other thing that I wanted to share with you are search filters. And in search, let me see, because there's something that I wanted to share with you. We have a announcement in here. This is something that I just posted yesterday, and I just wanted to share this with all of you as well. This is an NDA channel, but this happens to not be NDA. So contextual search is very new, and that's something that, it's been a long-standing request, and I'm so happy that it's finally here. And basically, what it is going to do is allow us to search and be able to go to. We can do Control F in the search bar up here, and it will allow us to search within this team for something. So I'm not going to search in that team for something, but let me go to another team here and I will show you what I'm talking about. And I use the search bar all of the time because I'm constantly trying to find people that work on a specific feature. So for me, I will say, oh, who works on private channels or who works on multi-tenant, tenant switching? And if I don't know the PM that works on that, then I will do a search in here. And the cool thing is that, let's say if I do private channels, I have the ability to then search on messages, people, or files related to that. So this is going to pull up all of my messages, then I can pull up all my people, and if there's any files, right? So here's all the messages that have to do with private channels. So I can go and I can find any of those conversations that happened around that topic. So that's a lot of times how I find out who owns what feature, as I go to that and search for the topic that I want. But I wanted to share with you that you know, we have that contextual search now so that you can search within a team. So it will not be within the entire within your entire teams, right? All of your teams. It'll just be within that specific team at a specific channel. So very, very exciting feature. Searching, you know, the other way that I search is a manual way, I would say, but being able to have all of these channels, and you know, I'll show you. So in our Microsoft Teams, this is okay, I should have a warning for this. Warning, this is a lot of channels. I recognize that the Microsoft Teams team does not necessarily use Teams the way that the rest of the world does, but we have a lot of channels here. And I'm telling you, so 100 hidden channels, okay? What I will tell you is that because all of these, and they're very well, you know, you can see there's a lot of bold here that I haven't even looked. There's a lot of detail in these channels and a lot of activities. So they're all very, very well used, even though there's as many as there are. But when I need to find information on something, this is what I love about Teams, is that there's these persistent conversations that exist on the topic that I'm looking to find out about that are just there. They exist. I can say, oh, this person answered this question. They're a good starting point for me. I never before Teams would have been able to figure out what's happening about a certain subject. I wouldn't have had that visibility. And I feel like I'm a fly on the wall now for, you know, 120, whatever it is, topics. And I'm able to see the people that are having the conversations who are the experts on that. I can go in there and just ask a question. And that's been so helpful to my productivity. I no longer now have to shoot an email to somebody and wait for that email to get responded to, only to find out that they're sick or they're on leave or they're out of the office or they don't know anything about what you're talking about. And then for them to either forward it on or for me to then have to track down the next person to ask the question to. And, you know, it becomes a back and forth of finding people. With Teams, I can just go in there and I can ask the question, hey team, wondering if anybody knows who the person is to talk to about X. Or oftentimes what I do is on behalf of all of you. If you're talking in the tech community, if you're an MVP or an RD that has a question, I don't know the answers. I don't know probably 80% of the things that all of you ask. But what I can do is use my resources and use Teams and go in and say, hey, I've got somebody that has this question and nobody's answered it. Who can help? So, you know, then I can link to the question that was asked, and then they can then go in the team and answer it themselves. And oftentimes that happens. Other times they'll say, oh, you should talk to so-and-so, and then they'll tag them. And then by tagging them, that notifies the person that they're being asked to do something. Teams is a lot of information. There's a lot of channels. There's a lot of teams, and you can see mine. I mean, look at all of these bolded things. We're not expected to go in and check every conversation in every channel in every team. That is just impossible. We don't have the time to do that. And it's not that we don't have the time because we're so busy. It's because there's not physically the number of minutes in a day that it would take for all of us to answer or to read every single thing in most cases. If you're in a smaller organization and there's not as many teams, it's a different story, and it's probably a little bit easier to do that. But if you can imagine getting emails from everybody on all of these topics, what your email would look like, it's the same thing. You know, in Teams, we're not just looking at the equivalent of an email that would come to you personally. We're looking at the equivalent of a lot of meetings and conversations that are stored there for you to have access to. And I think that, you know, for some of us who don't like seeing the notifications on our phone when there's an unanswered, or, you know, oh, you have, you know, 20 notifications in Twitter, and like you have to clear those out because you don't like seeing the notifications. It can be a little bit of anxiety for people to see all these bolded and red exclamation points. But honestly, you know, I think that the expectation is not that we're going in and checking every little thing. And so, you know, making sure that you know what you need to find, where to find it, and what is important to you, what is important to your work, and being able to focus on those things rather than the bolded conversations. All right, so finding what I need. Teams has really, you know, I can't say it enough. I know I am biased. However, I will say that it has really changed my life, having those persistent conversations and being able to go in and find what I need. I didn't show too much of the team owner reports, but I touched on that earlier. So hopefully you can dig into those a little bit. And like I said, those are for the teams as well as the channels. So check that out. There's tons of great data. I have been looking at them, but I haven't been using them. And so I'm really excited to start digging in and start using those, because I think it's going to help me actually manage my channels also when I start seeing that there are not very many topics happening or not very many conversations happening in certain channels. I may choose to delete those channels or merge them into something else. So yeah, team owner reports, that's a really good way for you to start managing your teams and seeing where the activity is taking place. So let's go on to using teams to create community. And this is the last section that I want to talk about. One is designating fun space, allowing people to show their personality, having a space to have ongoing conversations, and continuing team building. And this is what I want to say about using teams to create community. If you were at the keynote with Jerry and I yesterday, we talked about the fun button, and we had to laugh when we were creating the session, when we were talking about the session, because you know, Jerry was showing the examples, and you know, she works in a PR firm, and so they have a very different culture than we have at Microsoft, say. You know, we're in technology. I think they have a lot of fun there. We have a lot of fun, but it's different. It's just different cultures. And so when we were talking about the different ways to kind of stay connected with the people that you're working with, she talked about all these, you know, things that they do. And I said, you know, just Microsoft has everything open to, right? We allow GIFs and we allow emojis, and, you know, we do a lot of fun things. We create videos when there's a new feature. We've created some fun videos with the team and done some things like that. But you know, when organizations turn off that fun button, and by that I mean they go in and govern, you know, being able to use GIFs or emojis and things like that, you know, it kind of takes away from personality. And I'm sure there are use cases where that's important to do, but I really think that in order for us to all work well together, we have to remember that we're humans and we have to keep a human connection. And it's difficult sometimes when we're trying to be professional, we're working every day with one another, but at the same time, it's really good to have personal conversations. Just what did you do this weekend? How are you doing? Checking in with one another right now. There's a lot of garbage going on in the world, and it's a little bit scary for a lot of us. And so being able to just have people that you work with on a daily basis to talk to can be a really good thing, and teams can help you create spaces to have those conversations and times to have those conversations, whether it's just playing a fun game together and kind of breaking the ice, getting to know new people. I showed you the space that we have for get to know the team's team and get to know the MVPs. If I go back to my Microsoft Teams MVP team, you'll notice I have this space in here for everybody to get to know the MVPs, because I feel like I know the MVPs, not all of them one-on-one, but this is a program that I run, so I'm regularly communicating with a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. And there have been a couple of times where I have said, oh, just somebody will ask me a question, an MVP will ask me a question, and I will push them to another MVP and say, oh, you should talk to this person. And they're like, I don't know who that is. And then I remember, oh yeah, because I'm working with these people every single day, and there's, maybe close to 300 MVPs that work on teams or that focus on teams, but they don't all know each other. Some of them have been around for 20 years and some of them are brand new this year. And I forget that not everybody knows each other. Oh, and by the way, they're all around the world, right? Not everybody's in everybody's backyard, which is another cool thing. Think of all of us today that are here in this event and in this session, and how many of us are, we're all geographically dispersed, but we're all part of the same community, and that's pretty cool. So I created Meet the MVPs so that we can just highlight somebody every week. So Sung-Ki is, the last person that we introduced. He's from Korea, and now everybody knows a little bit, and hopefully Sung-Ki is not going to be mad at me, but we just share a little bit about what they do and who they are and something personal about them. What do you love in teams, right? And then as well as what do you do when you're not working? What are you into? What do you like to do? So it's just a way for us to get to know one another. And we do that for the Teams team as well. So we want our MVPs to know who we are. So here's Angela. Angela works on Teams EDU, on our education team. She drives that work. And putting a name with a face and starting to understand that we're all regular people can really help us work so well together. So that's why I do that. We also have places like Fun Stuff. And I think Fun Stuff is a really good idea for any team that you have, or any project team, or if it's your own team that you work with, having a place for your team to talk about fun stuff. This could be, celebrating birthdays here. Gareth had a birthday a couple weeks ago. We celebrated it. Whether it's somebody talking about their last vacation, or their something funny that they ate in quarantine, or what they're missing. This is a place for us to have those conversations without it cluttering up the general channel or other channels. So create those spaces for people to have those conversations, because we all like to talk about personal stuff and funny things we see on the internet and things like that. So creating a space to be able to do that is really helpful. And allowing people to show personality. I touched on that a little bit, but having GIFs and having emojis, we don't walk around the office with a file folder in front of our face. I say this and probably every time I talk to people. We don't look down and not make eye contact. We smile at people, we ask them questions, we stand in the lunchroom and heat up our lunch and talk to people that we haven't even really met. And so let's do that on Teams too. Just create those opportunities for us to be real people and to put a smiley face after something, or a sad face about something, or even, do something silly like this one with Gareth and be able to have a GIF in there. Let's create opportunity to have a little bit of personality, because once we know that we're all real people, we have more trust on people, and we get to know them on a different level, and that helps us collaborate even more so with them. Two more quick things, and I know we're getting out of time. One is having a water cooler or a virtual office or a community zone. And I want to share something that we've done with our team, with a QCO team. We have this channel called Community Zone. And the Community Zone is an ongoing meeting that we have now that we've all been working from home 100%, and we will be for quite some time here at Microsoft until at least October right now. And after that, we may even continue. And so the Community Zone is an ongoing meeting that we've set up, and it's just there whenever we need to talk. Okay, so we have this community zone that we can log into whenever we want to, and every once in a while I'll see that the meeting started and that people are in there, and people sometimes go in and just work in there, and other people will pop in, and it's kind of an ongoing meeting, just to touch base with people and say hello and be there together. So it gets used quite a bit. The other thing that we have is this 3-day a week. We have Alex has created a QCO huddle. And so we have this meeting that takes place 3 times a week, 7:30 a.m. It's a 30-minute quick session, but it's an opportunity for us just to have these quick check-ins. So we kind of go around, and you don't have to talk, but whoever has something, a question, this is where when we start hearing of issues, we hear on Twitter, or we hear on the tech community, or we hear from our customers that people are starting to have issues about something, we'll say, hey, I heard this, has anybody else heard this? And then somebody else might say, oh yeah, my customer had that, or I heard that on through another channel, and then we'll start investigating and pulling those pieces together. But this is a place for us to have those kind of every other day check-in so that we can talk about those things. And then, of course, if we have any questions for our leadership, bringing those to Alex and the team as well. So it's just a nice place. Again, for me, it's a huge bonus because I've always been remote and I never had the opportunity to connect with my team like this. So I've said, hey, looking down the road, when we are back all back in the office, or you all are back in the office, can we continue to have these check-ins? Because I think this is an opportunity for them. They always just kind of do this in person because they all work in an open environment and can talk over the cubes to each other. And I don't have the opportunity to do that, and a few other people. So having that huddle or that check-in is a really great thing that I think will even happen after we're all back in the office. And continuing the team building. So I showed you, and you probably saw, in one of the conversations, that there's some fun activities that we're doing. So, there's cooking classes, and there's virtual scavenger hunt is the one that you probably had visibility to in an earlier demo that I did. There's all kinds of fun things that we're doing as a team, whether that's just my smaller team or our larger engineering team. Graham, our director of PM, is really, really great about connecting. He does a Woman at Teams lunch once a month, and so we can connect with him and just have lunch with him and talk about what's going on with us personally. And there's always a theme: bring your picture of your favorite vacation and so on. So continue those team building exercises. Don't stop those even after we're all back to normal. But if you aren't doing them already, start doing them. They can be 30-minute things once a month. They can be, once a day. It's just whatever your culture is and whatever makes sense for what you're doing. But allowing opportunity to connect is very, very important. Okay, so moving on, and I wanted to talk about how Teams is connecting or investing in community. There are several ways that Teams is investing in community, and I'm going to put this slide back up here so you can see all of our resources. But first, let me show you a couple of the things. One is our Microsoft Tech community. The tech community is a place with all of these different conversation spaces. Microsoft Teams is for generic Microsoft Teams questions. We have AMAs, Ask Microsoft Anything events. We just did one on devices, and we did one on education, and we did one on calling in meetings a couple of months ago. So that's where all of those take place. We also have a dedicated spot for developer conversations and for Skype for Business to Teams conversations. So use these. There are 164,000 members in the Microsoft Teams tech community space. So you've got so many people there to answer questions. We have people from the product group in there answering questions. We've got marketing people that are looking at those conversations, and of course, all of you. So a very, very useful space. Please continue to use it. In addition to the conversation spaces, we also have the Teams blog. And so that's aka.ms Teams blog. And this is where you're going to find the What's New blog. So every month we do a What's New in Microsoft Teams. And for many of you who are wanting to keep your pulse on what's happening with Microsoft Teams, this is the monthly blog where we kind of do a big wrap up of everything that is coming, recent things that have been deployed. So that's where you're going to find all the what's new, and then links to all of that documentation that supports those items. The Teams community blog is a new space. We actually just launched it on June 23rd, and I urge all of you to be a part of this. If you do not have your own blog space, or if you do and you want us to amplify and talk about what you're passionate about, we would love to have you a part of the Teams community blog. This is meant for our guest authors. We're going to be doing it every week. Tom Morgan just did this 5 tips for migrating existing line of business is around apps. So super great content in here coming from our community. MVPs, RDs, community members, all of you, we want you to contribute. So please do so. In my welcome blog here, I talk more about that space, but it is brand new and we're excited to have you be a part of that. The other thing that I wanted to share is Uservoice, and Uservoice is where our team looks to make sure that we're keeping a pulse on what you're looking for. Please, when you have product feedback, put it in Uservoice. It enables us to understand not only how many people or the number of people asking for something, but we do dig into the comments that you make. So when you submit something to Uservoice, please share with us why you need that or the task you are trying to complete, rather than just saying, I want X. It's really useful for us to understand what you're trying to accomplish. It just lends context and allows our engineers to create a solution to complete that task or that thing that you're trying to do. Because a lot of times we may be working on a complete redesign of an area, and there's multiple features that can fit into that. So please give us your context, and that's really useful. If you go to aka.ms What's New, you're going to find all the What's New items. You can also locate What's New directly from your Teams client. If you go down here to Help and What's New, you're going to find all of that there. So, and that's kept up to date on a regular basis as well. And then finally, the roadmap, aka.ms Teams roadmap. And here's where you're going to find what is coming. You can look at all of the different products, but here I filtered by Microsoft Teams. It will tell you when we're planning on releasing. Keep in mind, sometimes those dates shift. This is plan of record right now, all these dates. Every once in a while, there's something that prevents us from being able to do it. Of course, we all want all the features yesterday as much as you do, but oftentimes we have to shift priorities, and especially with COVID right now, we're seeing a lot of that. So the roadmap will give you an idea of what we're working on and how we're progressing there. So here are all the resources. I think they're all pretty self-explanatory there. I tried to give you the ones that I thought were most important. Those two at the bottom there, the flipbook and Teams adoption, those are really useful for people who are deploying Teams for the first time or who had to rapidly deploy it and weren't able to do all the wonderful things planning wise you wanted to do, and now are looking to go back and kind of make sure that you've got some of the governance in place and documentation and training in place. So great resources there. Everything's customizable for you. All right. With that, I just want to thank you all for being a part of this event and for coming to my session. I'm sorry I went a little bit over. Apparently I had a lot to show you. So I hope maybe you took some things away from this. And again, I'd love to hear your feedback, not only on this session, but I want to hear how you're using Teams and the great things that you're doing. So please share in the tech community. If you're interested in writing a blog, I'd love to have you in the community blog as well. So big thank you for coming. I will join the breakout here in a few minutes and I'll take your questions there. Stay connected with me. I've put my email there, but honestly, you can reach me in Teams if you can do that, or stay connected with me on Twitter at Laurie Pottmeyer. So thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for being a part of Comms First, and enjoy the last day of the event tomorrow, and hope to see you in person when we can all do that. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Laurie. I've put a link to the breakout room in the announcement section in the Q&A. And if you can, please leave our speaker some feedback in the survey, goteams.fans/survey. Thanks very much.